The world was told lies about my dad's death. The whole courtroom was quiet after just one statement. The actress Jean Hackman's daughter spoke to the judges and told them a shocking truth. The death of her father and his wife was not normal or an accident. What did the FBI miss? Who lied about the truth? What kind of proof is hidden in Santa Fe's dust? The story hasn't ended yet. It's just beginning. The quiet in the courtroom was unbearable. People looked at Leslie Ann Hackman, who was the only daughter of famous actress Jean Hackman. She stood there with a steady gaze that couldn't hide how tense she felt. When she went in front of the jury today, they would ask her about her father's last months and the truth that everyone wanted to hear. Did she really not know anything? Or had she been keeping something from you for a long time? From the beginning, Leslie said that she and her father were very close. In an interview, she said, he still called me. We talked once a week. People felt a little better when they heard. My father was very clear. He still talked about the books he read and the old movies he loved. Jean Hackman, who played tough, unbending roles on TV and in movies, seemed to have kept a sharp mind in real life. The story started to fall apart after that. It was shocking to learn that Leslie hadn't seen her father in months before he died, according to Hackman's phone records and the words of people who knew him well. He didn't talk to Leslie very much in the almost year before he died. The calls she talked about didn't seem to exist. Or what she said true, or were they just lies? When police started to look into Jean Hackman's last days, they found something strange. He hadn't left his house in months. He lived in a quiet house in New Mexico with his wife, Betsy Arakawa. Hackman didn't show up in public very often, and his neighbors said they rarely saw him outside. This was very different from what Leslie said about a healthy, clear-headed man. Why didn't Leslie understand this? What was wrong with her? If she really was close with her dad, why didn't she notice the odd signs? One idea was that Leslie didn't really know because, as she said, she hadn't stayed in touch with Hackman. There was another scarier idea, though. She might have known everything, but was hiding something on purpose. Leslie didn't show up until after everything was over, which was one of the most strange things. She wasn't with Hackman during his last days, and she didn't help with his care. Some people in the family started to wonder why Leslie seemed so close to her dad when she hadn't seen him in a long time. A producer who used to work with Hackman said something vague. Jean wasn't the type to hide his illnesses, but not everyone wants to admit the truth. What truth? Was Hackman much weaker than Leslie said? Or did she have another secret she didn't want to share? As the case went on, several theories were put forward. The first possibility is that Leslie didn't know much about her dad's health because she hadn't talked to him in a while. She may not have been close to Hackman for as long as she thought, and what she said about how close they were was probably not true. The second possibility is that Leslie knew her father was sick, but chose to hide it. She might have felt bad about not being with him, or she might not have been able to tell the truth. 3. Leslie was trying to keep a secret from everyone about something strange that happened in Hackman's last few months. One big question that didn't get answered during the trial was why Hackman shut himself off from the world if he was really as healthy as Leslie said. Why could only Betsy Arakawa confirm what was really going on with him? Also, why did Leslie look so worried when she was asked about her dad's last few months? Many parts of this story have not been told yet, but one thing is certain. Leslie can't keep the truth from everyone forever. It was hard for Leslie Ann Hackman to accept what she was reading in the medical investigation papers. Her dad had very bad Alzheimer's. He had more than one heart attack. That was something she had never heard of or thought of, and most importantly, she had told the media she didn't believe. But now, the proof that she couldn't deny was all around her. Leslie had always claimed that her father was completely fine. There were no signs of illness on his part. He was still awake and aware. My father was still reading books and still able to drive, she told the press. But the medical reports showed something very different. According to the test results, Hackman had been dying for at least 2 years with serious Alzheimer's that was getting worse over time. People who knew him well had seen signs of his memory loss for a while now. He forgot old friends' names and how to get home, even though he had lived there for over 10 years. Some former housekeepers said Hackman didn't always recognize Betsy Arakawa as his wife. But what worried me the most was his heart problem. The probe report proved that Hackman had had several heart attacks in the past, but he had never told anyone about them. He had been treated by a doctor who wrote in the file, "Patient has had heart attacks in the past and shows signs of severe coronary artery disease." It is not clear why the family did not give this information. Why didn't Leslie and his sweetie this week? While this information was still fresh, the media started to doubt Leslie's claims right away. Being close to her father is something that the woman should have known, since she always said that she did. Strangely, though, she didn't know that Hackman was sick, or rather, she didn't want to know. Some reporters thought that Leslie didn't notice her father's illness because she lived too far away from him in his last years. According to someone at the hospital, Leslie didn't even go see her dad once while Hackman was getting treatment. She can lie to the press about anything, but we never saw her at the hospital. A nurse who did not want to be named said. Why did Leslie paint a different picture of her dad? Another question that came up was why Leslie lied about Hackman's health. Why did she know that her dad really did have Alzheimer's? Did she not want to say the truth, which was that her father had been mentally ill for a long time? It was thought that Leslie wasn't the only one who wanted to keep this truth from everyone. Some sources said that Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa, had full control over all of the details about his health. In his last years, she was the only one who cared about him and chose who could talk to Hackman and who couldn't. Hackman's neighbor once said, "I haven't seen Leslie here in at least 2 years. Betsy was always with Jean." That meant Leslie wasn't lying. She just didn't know the truth because she hadn't been with her dad in that time. But this brought up an even bigger question. Why was Hackman so alone that his own daughter didn't know he was sick? When this information showed up in the media, it caused a huge stir of debate. Leslie seemed like a daughter who loved her dad, but maybe she was just trying to keep the family's good name. Some people brought up an interesting question. Are we seeing a typical case of a Stars family wanting to protect the beautiful image of them to the point of denying all the bad facts? Jean Hackman's friends were also split. Some thought that Leslie really didn't know about her father's illness because Betsy had purposely hidden it. Some people, though, believed Leslie hid the truth on purpose because she didn't want to see Jean Hackman, who wasn't as strong as she used to be. Why did she say her dad was conscious when all the medical proof showed he wasn't? How often did she really talk to Hackman? As often as she said she did. And most importantly, was there a secret hidden behind Jean Hackman's failing health? Whatever the answer, one thing was certain. The famous Jean Hackman was no longer himself in his later years. He was not the strong, sharp man the people once knew. The people outside of his home thought he was fine while he was sick with a terrible disease. When the news came out that Jean Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, had died, Hollywood was shocked. One of the greats of movies was gone. But what really upset people was not just his death, but also the way he and his wife died. At first, the police said the situation was strange, which is not usually used in cases of natural death. People started to come up with ideas right away, and a question made everyone think. Is this just a sad coincidence, or is it something more sinister? Jean Hackman died because her health was getting worse. Betsy Arakawa's death was even stranger. She didn't have heart disease, major signs of health decline, or any other dangerous conditions going on underneath the surface. But the autopsy report said she died of a rare disease that mice spread. The medical world was shocked right away. One doctor from the CDC said, "This disease is so rare that we hardly ever see anyone getting it in the United States. And it's strange that a woman living in a luxurious mansion with excellent sanitary conditions could contract this disease." It didn't end there. When the cops looked into Betsy's last days, they found something strange. She had no contact with anyone else. No family or friends came to visit. The hospital doesn't have any records of her seeing a doctor in the last year. People called her phone, but she didn't answer. The delivery people also said they rarely saw anyone answer the door. How did she get the disease then? Did someone bring the virus into Hackman's house on purpose, or was it just a lucky accident? The reporters started to guess right away about the answers to these questions. In the middle of all the chaos, Hackman's death made things even stranger. After his wife died, Jean Hackman spent most of his time alone. Since the former housekeeper quit, no one knew what was going on in his home for weeks. Police say Hackman died alone, according to the autopsy report. In his last days, he didn't have anyone by his side or any signs of medical care. This was very different from the picture his family had painted before. Who was the last person to see Hackman alive? A postal worker once saw a lot of mail at his door, but no one there to get it. There were nearby security cameras that didn't record anyone coming or going in the 3 weeks before Hackman's body was found. As the medical report said, he had serious heart disease and Alzheimer's. So why weren't any doctors or nurses taking care of him? Someone used Hackman's loneliness to make sure he wouldn't get help at the most important time, according to a theory. Who would do that, though? Investigators saw a lot of important facts right away that they couldn't ignore. Hackman and his wife seemed to be all by themselves. In their last few months, why did a pair with many Hollywood ties disappear from public view? People who lived nearby said they hadn't seen anyone enter or leave Hackman's house in weeks. This was different from what he usually did. Hackman used to enjoy talking with his neighbors, but he hasn't been seen or heard from in a while. There are no medical records of Hackman's care. The medical investigation report said he had serious heart disease and advanced Alzheimer's. So why were there no records of his treatment? What, no new prescriptions? No meetings with the doctor? There are no nurses or aides listed in his financial records. Security system turned off. Police found that the security system for the house had been off for at least 3 weeks before Hackman's body was found. Who turned this thing off? What's more, why did Hackman get left alone right after his wife died? The more they looked into it, the more evidence there was that these deaths were not random. People began to wonder, who wanted to keep Hackman and his wife apart? What was the real source of the odd disease Betsy got? Why was Hackman left alone in his last days? Leslie Ann Hackman, Jean's only daughter, had to go to court to witness as the case got worse. She never thought that one day she would have to go to court and answer questions about how her father died. Even though she had dangerous health problems, the forensic report said she died of a rare disease that mice spread. The medical world was shocked right away. A doctor from the CDC said, "This disease is so rare that we hardly ever see anyone getting it in the United States." And it's strange that a woman living in a luxurious mansion with excellent sanitary conditions could contract this disease. It didn't end there. When the cops looked into Betsy's last days, they found something strange. She had no contact with anyone else. No family or friends came to visit. The hospital doesn't have any records of her seeing a doctor in the last year. People called her phone, but she didn't answer. The delivery people also said they rarely saw anyone answer the door. How did she get the disease then? Did someone bring the virus into Hackman's house on purpose, or was it just a lucky accident? The news media started to guess right away about these questions, and Hackman's death made everything even more strange. After his wife died, Jean Hackman spent most of his time alone. Since the former housekeeper quit, no one knew what was going on in his home for weeks. Police say Hackman died alone, according to the autopsy report. In his last days, he didn't have anyone by his side or any signs of medical care. This was very different from the picture his family had painted before. Who was the last person to see Hackman alive? A postal worker once saw a lot of mail at his door, but no one there to get it. There were nearby security cameras that didn't record anyone coming or going in the 3 weeks before Hackman's body was found. As the medical report said, he had serious heart disease and Alzheimer's. So why weren't any doctors or nurses taking care of him? Someone used Hackman's loneliness to make sure he wouldn't get help at the most important time, according to a theory. Who would do that, though? Plus, why is it important? Investigators saw a lot of important facts right away that they couldn't ignore. Hackman and his wife seemed to be all by themselves in their last few months. Why did a pair with many Hollywood ties disappear from public view? People who lived nearby said they hadn't seen anyone enter or leave Hackman's house in weeks. This was different from what he usually did. Hackman used to enjoy talking with his neighbors, but he hasn't been seen or heard from in a while. There are no medical records of Hackman's care. The medical investigation report said he had serious heart disease and advanced Alzheimer's. So why were there no records of his treatment? What? No new prescriptions? No meetings with the doctor? There are no nurses or aides listed in his financial records. Security system turned off. Police found that the security system for the house had been off for at least 3 weeks before Hackman's body was found. Who turned this thing off? What's more, why did Hackman get left alone right after his wife died? The more they looked into it, the more evidence there was that these deaths were not random. People began to wonder who wanted to keep Hackman and his wife apart. What was the real source of the odd disease Betsy got? Why was Hackman left alone in his last days? Leslie Ann Hackman, Jean's only daughter, had to go to court to witness as the case got worse. She never thought that one day she would have to go to court and answer questions about how her father died. The public's attention turned to one name, Leslie Ann Hackman, as the deaths of Jean Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were talked about over and over again. Leslie always talked about how close she was to her father, who was a celebrity. But the most important question was still unanswered. Did she really not know anything about Hackman's condition, or was she hiding something shocking? And what if she knew more than what she said? Could what she said change the whole case? As soon as the new investigative papers came out, lawyers started to make a bold claim. Leslie and Hackman's evidence could be the most important key to finding out what really happened. Sources from the Santa Fe cops say that Leslie hadn't seen her sick father in a long time, months at least. That being the case, how could she say Hackman was fine before he died? If Leslie didn't know that Hackman had Alzheimer's that was getting worse and serious heart problem, it was a shocking error. What if she knew but said she wasn't? That would be a huge surprise, and it might even lead to a new probe. There were still a lot of questions about how Hackman and Arakawa died. Arakawa got a rare disease that is only found in rodents, which is too much of a chance not to be suspicious. Hackman was very sick and couldn't call for help, even though he lived in a big house. Last but not least, no one outside that house knew for days what happened inside. Leslie's evidence could change the whole case if she knew anything about what happened before it. Even though she was one of the biggest movie stars of all time, Jean Hackman kept to herself after she left Hollywood in 2004. He pretty much cut himself off from the show business and chose to live a simple life with his wife in New Mexico. That loneliness made me think of a scary idea. Was he really alone in his last years? Hackman didn't know that his wife had died many days before because he had such bad Alzheimer's. Was someone using his illness to hide something? This seemed even stranger when his only daughter said she didn't know what was wrong with her dad. It was a family disaster if Leslie didn't know anything about it. A famous father and his only daughter were falling apart, which broke Leslie's heart. But if she knew more than what was said, this event's real story could be much more difficult. Her words could be the last piece needed to piece together the truth, or they could make the case even more mysterious. What do you think? Would Leslie Ann Hackman be brave enough to tell everything, or would she keep quiet? For a long time, Hollywood has been the center of movies around the world. It has also been a maze of power, desire, and dark secrets. Legends from the past reach the heights of fame and then vanish, sometimes because their fame is fading, and sometimes because no one dares to speak about it. Betsy Arakawa and Jean Hackman tried to get away from Hollywood by living in the country. But did they really get away from the hands that are controlling the entertainment business? What's more, did they know something that the people in charge didn't want the public to know? An unnamed source once said that Hackman and Arakawa tried to stay away from Hollywood because they wanted to have a quiet old age and because they thought they had found the truth by accident. They knew too much. People in the entertainment business whispered this comment around, which led to a lot of different ideas. What did they know, though? Hackman was not only a famous and skilled actor, but he also had a lot of connections with important people in the business. He had been to parties for rich people and heard talks that most people would never hear. In his later years, Hackman may have put the pieces together and found out a shocking secret, Or he may have seen something that was true that no one wanted him to say. Hackman and Arakawa weren't the only famous people who quit Hollywood. Over the years, there have been a number of strange deaths in this business, and people still have a lot of questions about them. After finishing Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick died suddenly. The movie was said to reveal the secrets of the strong elite. Brittany Murphy and her husband Simon Monjack both died in strange ways. The stated cause of death was pneumonia, but many people think they were poisoned because they knew too much. Isaac Cappy was an actor who spoke out against the bad things going on in Hollywood. He was later found dead for a strange reason. Were Hackman and Arakawa the ones who solved these mysteries? The death of Arakawa made people even more suspicious. A rare disease that is spread by rodents. It was a very unlikely coincidence. Hackman also ended up living alone in a house that no one ever went to, and he had no one with him during his last days. If these deaths were really natural, why did the police first think they were suspicious? One big thing that made Jean Hackman different from many of his peers was that the dark forces in the entertainment industry never really had control over him. He didn't join any powerful groups or work for any government. The fact that he might know too much and be ready to tell the truth, if pushed, might have made him a threat all along. What would happen if Hackman was going to tell a shocking lie? Was that why he and his wife left Hollywood all of a sudden? If these ideas are correct, did someone do something before Hackman could speak out? Gene Hackman was once one of the most famous people in Hollywood, but he died in a very quiet way in his later years. Betsy Arakawa, who was healthy, died of a rare disease, and Leslie Ann Hackman, who was the only person who could explain anything, didn't know what was wrong with her father. All of these things raise one big question. Were these events just chance, or was there a plan behind them? Hollywood isn't just dark because of the secrets of power and influence. When that happens, it can be hard on the people who are still alive and have a lot of questions. That tragedy for Leslie Ann Hackman is not only a loss, but also a scar that will never go away. People in the public ask questions, family puts pressure on, and the media never lets go. People have strong opinions about Leslie, and she becomes the subject of the most important questions. Does she not know anything about her dad's health? Or is she trying to avoid talking about it? Does she have a bigger secret to hide? Or is she just a victim in this strange play? No matter what the answer is, this event has shook Hollywood and changed Leslie's life forever. Even though Leslie Ann Hackman said her father was fine before he died, the medical report showed that he wasn't. Jean Hackman had Alzheimer's that was getting worse, serious heart disease, and had had several heart attacks. Questions constantly surround her. How could she not know about her father's condition? Why did she claim he was fine when all proof says otherwise? Did she really think that, or was it a cover-up? Her every word was studied, examined, her every move put under a microscope. Some people aren't sure if Leslie knew she lost both of her parents in the weirdest ways, but one thing is certain. She did. This pain is real, and it is a wound that nothing can fix. Leslie not only faced pressure from the media and public opinion, but also from her own family. Some in her family thought she wasn't taking care of her folks enough and was too far away from them as they aged. Others suspected that she knew more than she shared. Which feeling did Leslie herself have the most trouble with? What was her fault for not seeing her parents more often? Could she have done anything to avoid this tragedy? If she had noticed something sooner, did she really believe this was just a series of chance events? Those questions not only came from outside, but also repeated in her own mind, haunting her every night. Some conspiracy theories suggested that Leslie might be part of this dark story, whether deliberately or accidentally. What if she wasn't telling the truth? People kept wondering if her parents had warned her, but she didn't listen. Did she not pay attention when Hackman or Arakawa said something strange? Or did someone or something even force her to stay quiet? These are only ideas, of course. While there is no proof that Leslie was participating in any plot, it is clear that she is now the target of all suspicion. The case of Betsy Arakawa and Jean Hackman was not only a tragedy for their family, but it also shook Hollywood. There are now bigger questions like How many other famous people have vanished without a trace? Is Hollywood really a place where art can thrive? Or is it just a machine run by unseen forces? What other secrets are there hidden behind the lights? The most important question is, who will be next? The story isn't over yet, and it might never be. Many great stories are made in Hollywood. There are stories of glory, power, and secret tragedies behind the velvet screen. But some of those stories have secrets that can't be answered and holes that can't be fixed. The deaths of Jean Hackman and Betsy Arakawa are still very mysterious. Jean Hackman was a famous singer, and Betsy Arakawa was her jealous husband. It's possible for any hypothesis to be true or wrong. The scary thing is that the truth might have been buried for good. Leslie Ann Hackman will always have questions that she wants to ask. Is she a victim or a part of the game? Does she not know anything, or is she hiding a terrible truth? She will live her whole life under suspicion, even if she doesn't find the truth. Hollywood has seen many deaths before, like Marilyn Monroe, Natalie Wood, and Brittany Murphy, who all quietly died while stories spread about them. Next people to be hurt by an unseen force, or is it just fate? There's no real ending to the story. Some secrets in Hollywood history are so mixed up with fiction that the truth is never known. This is just one of many, and there is only one truth for those who still ask. Silence might be the best answer.